Hey, this is Courtney Gains, Malachi from Children of the Corn, and you're listening to Spooky as Shit.
Welcome to Spooky Ass Shit. I am your host, Eric Dwinnells, and with me tonight, making her grand return, Fatima Elmi.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Oh, thank you.
Tonight, we are talking about a movie from more than 30 years ago now called Children of the Corn.
Ooh.
And we're going to talk about the movie, but we're also going to talk about the short story that it was based on.
Oh, cool.
Written by Sir Stephen King.
Okay.
He's not actually
I was going to
sir.
say, is he a sir?
No, because he's not English. He's from Maine. But
okay. All right.
I just think if we did give out knighthoods, he probably would have been knighted by now. He'd probably be a Sir Stephen King.
Sure.
Of course, before we really dive into things, I want to remind everyone that they can check out the website, Spooky Ass Shit or SpookyAS.com.
Mm-hmm.
They both take you to the same place. That's the show's blog page. You can find pictures, video clips sometimes. I'm sure I'll have some from this one. And sometimes even outtakes. Maybe we'll make some, I don't know. But you can find all those there. You can also find links to our social media. That is at Spooky Ass Shit on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/SpookyAS. Just over on Facebook, just this morning, I posted a video from Sleepy Hollow.
Yes. I saw it.
Yeah. So that's an example of some of the fun little extras you get from being our friend on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
So now, Children of the Corn. I saw this movie when I was a child. And although I did grow up in, it was basically farm country.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Back in those days. It's become much more metropolitan now.
Sure.
But everything, I feel like an old man because I'll point out stuff to my nieces and nephews and be like, you know, when I was a kid, that was a farm. And there's like 4 or 5 different spots in town that I'm like, oh, that whole complex right there, that used to be a farm. And now it's like a grocery store and a gym and, you know, so anyway.
Do you say a jam?
I said a gym.
Oh.
But maybe I said it with an accent.
That
jam.
Accent. Okay.
Yeah. So I do remember watching Children of the Corn even when I was a child, and overall I was never really afraid of movies. Like I could, from a pretty young age, I could separate like reality from fantasy.
Okay. But
there were moments that were freaky for me, so it lasted with me. But I think overall just the images of the knives, like there's just knives and other like farming equipment. There's in this movie, there's constantly images of people like taking out farming tools.
They're definitely focusing on
that they're using
those
as weapons.
Yeah.
And you see like the blade shine and stuff like that.
Right.
It happens like every 30 seconds in this movie.
Yep.
And I just like, I'm not knocking the movie for that. I'm actually saying that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because like even as a kid, I was like, oh, that's badass. There's something's going to happen here.
Yeah, it's freaky.
Yeah. So, yeah, I've known the movie for a long time, but you had never seen it before.
No, never.
So at the end, we'll talk about actually kind of as we go, we'll talk about it.
Okay.
I don't want to do like a scene by scene rundown. I've done that on past shows, and I always feel like I think I gave a little too much of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
And it got kind of heavy in like describing the plot. But on the other hand, there are specific things that I want to talk about, and sometimes the people need to know what the buildup is, what's coming from it.
That makes sense.
So I'm trying to get better at what we call trimming the fat in the comedy world.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know if I'm successful today because there were many. I was like, all right, well, this happens and then this happens.
You got to talk about that.
So that's kind of how this episode's going to go.
Okay.
For those of you who don't know, who aren't familiar, Children of the Corn was a movie made in the early 80s. I believe it came out in 83. And it was based on a short story by the same name by Sir Stephen King. First published in March of 1977 in an issue of Penthouse magazine.
Wow. Who knew?
Yeah.
That I did not know.
But then it was later used in a collection of King's short stories in a 1978 publication, Night Shift.
Okay.
On the night shift.
I like that song.
I don't know the rest of the
Night
words.
Shift.
Yeah.
Oh, the Commodores?
Yeah, it's black guys, I think. Like, I think it's a black group.
It's the Commodores minus
I'm not talking
Lionel
about
Richie.
Night Moves. Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah.
It's a different song
Yeah, it is. You're right.
by a white guy.
Right.
So I'm not sure. The movie either... I think the movie was made in 83, but maybe didn't come out until 84. I don't know. I could
be.
look this up, but... What's the
You
point?
didn't look it up?
Well, I have 1984 in here, but the movie is set in 1983, so I'm thinking that
Yeah, they probably filmed it in 83 and it came out in 84. Could be. Who knows? I don't know.
We're going to talk about some of the differences between the movie and the story near the end of the episode.
Okay.
But basically, they follow the same plot. It's just that they diverge at a certain point.
Okay.
But they basically follow the same plot. There's a young couple driving cross country when they accidentally hit a boy with their car near the fictional town of Gatlin, Nebraska. When the couple go to town to get help, they discover that the town appears completely abandoned, but actually it's home to a cult of murderous children who worship a being that they call He Who Walks Behind the Rose.
Mm-hmm.
In the short story, they believe that this is actually the God of the Old Testament. In the movie, they don't say that specifically, but actually there's a weird thing that Issac says in the movie that might give a hint as to what these children think He Who Walks Behind the Rose really is.
Okay.
But we'll get to that in a minute.
Cool.
These children are led by a boy preacher named Issac
Mm-hmm.
and his right-hand man, the sadistic Malachi. Now, you can tell just by the way we both just said his name, Malachi is kind of a big deal.
Ooh, yeah, he is scary.
We'll talk more about him when we get to the movie. But anyway, the hero couple then has to fight to survive this cult. But how they do so and what happens to them is the biggest difference between the story and the movie. I assume you have not read the story.
I have not read the story, so I'm very interested to see what the differences are.
All right. So we're going to focus on the movie, really.
Yes.
Mostly because actually I couldn't find a lot of information about like why Stephen King wrote this story. I've seen a lot of theories and people kind of breaking it down and talking about like, oh, well, this is an allegory for the Vietnam War. The children were being sacrificed and blah, blah, blah.
Oh.
But I can't find anything from Stephen King saying that this is so. The boy preacher, there are actual boy preachers, and there was a documentary made in the 70s called Marjo. Are you familiar with that?
No.
It's really interesting, actually. I'd recommend you look it up. I bet you can find it on YouTube. But it was this guy who was a boy preacher. He was forced to do it by his parents, and he was really good at it, and they used to make a lot of money. But at a certain point, he realized that it was BS, and his parents were really just trying to make money. So he didn't want to do it anymore, and he eventually stopped doing it. But then he made this documentary where he's like, I'm going to do it again, but I'm going to show you exactly how these evangelical preachers like scam you out of money and what they say and what they do, and he films it the whole time.
Wow.
So it's kind of shady that he does it because he is actually taking people's money under the pretense of like being a preacher. But he's making this documentary to show, like, so it's kind of...
Okay.
Yeah.
All
But anyway, that
I'll
movie,
have to look it up.
I don't know if that came out before or after Children of the Corn, but I just thought maybe if it came out before, maybe that's something that inspired Stephen King.
Good theory.
Just saying. So let's start, actually, before we talk about the movie, let's talk about the poster for the movie.
Yeah.
You've seen the poster, right?
Yeah.
With the arms sticking up, holding the sickle.
Right. Okay.
And then it says Children of the Corn, but it's like this, it's just like a silhouette of an arm over a red background, over a cornfield. And if you look closely at the cornfield, I never even noticed this when I was a kid, I don't think, but you can see like little figures in the cornfield holding up more like pitchforks and stuff like that.
I did not notice that.
It's a very simple image, but a very striking image. I always thought it was really cool. And it has the tagline on it, and a child shall lead them. Now, Fatima, does that mean anything to you?
And a child shall lead them?
Yeah.
No, it just...
I only ask because I know that you were not raised Christian.
Oh, okay.
So I was wondering
No,
if you
I
would
didn't
recognize that this is actually a Bible.
No, it
quote.
didn't. Nothing religious came to my mind.
Okay. So it's actually a Bible quote.
Okay, good to know.
It is from the book of Isaiah 11:6, and it says, the full sentence is, "The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the kid, and the calf and the young lion and the fatling together, and a child shall lead them."
Okay.
So obviously this is a play on the religion and also the fact that it is a child leading the cult.
Right.
The movie stars Peter Horton as Burt. We've got a lot to say about Burt, but we're going to save it because right now we're just talking about the cast. Peter Horton himself, best known for 30-something.
Right.
Apparently more recently he's been on Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, okay.
I don't watch that show.
I don't watch it either, but...
And then as his lovely young girlfriend in the movie, we have Vicky, who is played by Linda Hamilton.
Linda Hamilton.
Who we all know as Sarah Connor from the Terminator movies.
That's right. The
Yes.
Terminator movies came after Children of the Corn?
That's true.
Okay.
This was her first major film, I believe.
Okay.
We also have R.G. Armstrong, who played Dell, apparently, in the movie, although I don't know if they ever name him. Or maybe he was wearing a name tag and I just didn't notice.
Yeah.
But he has done a lot of movies. He was in Predator. Most memorable to me, he was in Dick Tracy as Pruneface.
Okay.
It's a very short scene that he's in,
Yeah,
but very memorable.
I
and
don't remember.
I had the action figure.
Oh,
I loved
cool.
Dick Tracy when I was a kid.
Oh,
That movie.
that was a good movie.
And he was also in, like, way back in the day, he was in some westerns with John Wayne and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Then we have John Franklin, who plays Isaac, who's a very interesting person in his own right. We'll talk about him later on, too. But he is also famous for, well, he's not really famous for it because you don't see his face, but he's in the Addams Family movies.
He is?
Yeah, as Cousin It.
Oh, no way.
So that's him covered in all that hair.
Oh, cool. Did not know that.
And he was also in Child's Play, apparently.
Oh.
He was one of the people that would wear, like, the Chucky suit.
Oh.
And when they needed, like, an actual walk-around Chucky.
Wow.
And the reason for that is he was very small of stature, which we'll get into later, but that's important to note.
Yes.
Then as Malachi, the aforementioned Malachi, who really steals the movie, I think.
Yeah.
We have Courtney Gains. Courtney Gains is best known for maybe The Burbs. He was like the teenage son of the weird family
Okay.
in The Burbs.
Yep.
And he was also in Sweet Home Alabama
I don't
as
know
the
that.
sheriff.
Okay.
Then we have Robbie Kiger. Could be saying that wrong. He plays Job, the little boy
Oh.
in the movie.
So cute.
And he was also Patrick in Monster Squad, which I know you haven't seen.
I
But
have not.
many people out there will have. Then we have Anne-Marie McAvoy. She plays Sarah, who's the little girl in the movie. But she was also, later on the TV show Full House as a semi-recurring character named Kathy Santoni.
Okay.
Now, I didn't remember this. But
No,
I
I
looked
didn't
it up
remember it
because I
either.
was like, well, what was this character? She was kind of a friend of me, of DJ and Kimmy Gibbler.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, she would help them out sometimes, but then, like, DJ and Kimmy would talk shit about her all the time. And be like, oh, she's a bimbo and she has too many boyfriends.
What?
And then later on, she ends up getting pregnant.
Oh, no.
And then Danny's afraid DJ is going to get pregnant. And it's a whole episode.
That's an episode. Okay. I'm going to have to look that one up.
Now, pretty soon after that, it looks like she quit acting, according to IMDb, because there's like, that was like 1991 or something, and then you don't see her again until 2016. She shows up in Fuller House, playing the same character at the high school reunion.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have to.
Yeah,
look
I'll
that
find
up.
some pictures and put them on spookyas.com.
Cool.
Also, someone I wanted to point out is Julie Madalena. Madalena. She plays Rachel in the movie, which is the girl, like, priestess.
Oh, yeah.
I thought she was actually really good. Like, she's creepy in the movie.
She was so creepy.
Yeah, but she's good. And I was like, I'm like, why haven't I seen her in anything else? Because it seems like,
Has she been
not that
in
she'd be
anything
a
else?
superstar necessarily,
Yeah,
but
no.
she was good enough that she would have kept getting
Yeah,
work.
she
I
was
would
a good
assume.
actress.
She has. She's actually not so much, in front of the camera,
Okay.
but she's a very prolific voice actress.
Oh, okay.
So she's got a ton of credits on IMDb, but it's mostly voice work.
Very cool.
So now let's get right into the movie itself.
Mm-hmm.
It starts off by showing us a scene that it says happened 3 years ago.
Right.
And you see, the adults leaving a church, and there's one little boy, and he's the narrator for us for this scene. And he says, yeah, all the other kids were in the cornfield except for my sister who was homesick with my mom. But everyone else went out to the cornfield with Isaac, but I didn't go because I thought Isaac was kind of creepy. So then they go to this diner, and the dad's like, I'm going to go call mom and make sure Sarah's okay. The little boy's name is Job.
Right.
And the little girl's name is Sarah.
Right.
We learn.
Okay.
But as they're in there, he sees that some of the teenagers, including Malachi, are already in the diner. And he's like, oh, I guess their meeting is over, but they're acting kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, they're acting creepy because then Isaac shows up and he kind of winks through the window. And one of the teenagers locks the door.
Oh, yeah.
And then what happens, Fatima?
All hell breaks loose. People be dying.
Yeah, the first thing that happens is the waitress, who's a teenager, slips some kind of poison, probably arsenic or something, into the coffee.
Right.
So some old people start like gasping and choking at the table. And once they do that, the teenagers, in the first of many times, as I said, we see, reveal these weapons that they've hidden in different places. So we have lots of shots of hands producing weapons from different places.
Right.
And they go through and they kill all the adults in the diner. Now, the thing is, though, with this scene is it's not as violent as it sounds because they don't actually show most of the violence.
Right.
There is 1 or 2 times where you see someone's throat get cut, but it's not like a big gory thing. You just kind of see the blade move over it.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably the most memorable part is the man who has his hand
sawed off.
Yeah, into the meat cutter.
Eee.
But you don't see it.
Yeah,
you just
they don't
see,
show it.
You see him, them forcing his hand into it, or about to, and then they cut away and you see the blood splatter on Job's face.
Right, yeah.
And of course, Job's father is killed, but he was on the phone with the mom. So you hear the mom saying, hey, are you there? Are you there?
Mm-hmm.
And then you also hear the mom say, what are you kids doing in here? Get out. And then you hear her scream. So now, she's being murdered too.
Right.
And Job says this happened all over town. Now, one thing about this scene is that I always found interesting is you see that the kids, because later in the movie, they're all dressed like Amish kind of.
Right.
Like farmery. But in this scene, they're dressed in their modern clothes.
Right. Yeah.
And I have to say, Malachi does not look nearly as intimidating.
No.
In his modern clothes as he does in his later on outfits.
That's right. And it looks like their hair has grown, like when they cut. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was 3 years before.
Right.
And then Job tells us that Sarah draws pictures, and we learn through the movie that she actually can see the future.
Mm-hmm.
So when she draws pictures, she's drawing the future. But over the credits, they show a montage of her pictures showing what happened to all the adults all over town.
Right.
And it's just, a little girl's drawing of people murdered and stuff, and Isaac standing over everybody smiling and everything.
Creepy.
Now, you also get some scary shots of corn, which is another theme in the movie. We have those weapons being shown constantly, and then we have scary corn. Then we cut to Linda Hamilton. Waking up her boyfriend, Burt.
Yeah.
She announces it's his birthday.
Right.
And she says, I have a special treat for you.
Mm-hmm.
And she does a little song and dance number.
Oh, no.
Now, as we watched the movie, I did mention that I was a little disappointed in the song and dance.
Which I thought was just perfectly fine.
Well, here's the thing.
Yes.
She wakes him up on his birthday.
Yeah.
Saying, I've got a special treat. We've got a song for you.
Sure.
And a dance.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. I mean, you woke me up on my birthday. It seems like on my birthday I should get to wake up on my own, but okay. Sure.
Okay.
But she wakes him up with one of those like noisemaker things.
Yeah.
That like spits out the, you blow into it and it spits out the paper.
Yeah,
thing.
I don't know what they're called, but I know what you're saying.
Yeah. She wakes him up with that and then announces she's got the special song and dance. Now, she does sing a little bit and she does dance a little bit, but both only a little bit. I'm just saying, if you wake me up and tell me you've got a special song and dance to show me, I want more than just a little bit of like wiggling.
You wanted like full choreography?
Something.
Really?
Well, you said earlier when I mentioned that I was a little disappointed in her dance, you said, Oh, you want her to strip more?
I did say that. What did you want, like a strip tease?
Well, I mean, that's fine. I wouldn't. That would have been fine.
Okay. She
but
showed
that's
a
not
little
even.
shoulder.
She did,
Okay.
very awkwardly, by the way.
So
She had a little trouble getting her robe off.
maybe she's she's not a dancer.
Well, that's fine, but it
Then
was
don't
really,
announce it.
Yeah, just do it then. Don't make
Okay.
it. Don't be like, I've got a floor show. Wait for this.
Oh,
When she does is she does the hokey pokey basically.
Yes. Yeah. I thought it was
And
fine.
then she tumbles into bed with him
Yeah.
and doesn't even finish the song. Song's still playing. She's only done the first verse and chorus.
Sure. I mean, what else do you want from Linda?
Just saying.
Okay.
It was I think it was her first movie, her first major
Right.
movie.
Okay. So
And
that's
she
nice.
mentioned that she was nearing 30 when she made it. She's not exactly sure how old she was, but she said
thought
nearing
she could
30.
be 28.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We learned that from the special features on the Blu-ray. In the original story, the boyfriend and girlfriend are actually husband and wife,
Oh, okay.
and they're traveling cross country in an effort to save their relationship
Oh.
because it's not going so great.
Oh.
And they bicker the whole time in the book.
Huh.
But the producer of the movie said, "No, we want likable characters,
Mhm.
and so we want to have a happy ending."
Right.
And so
okay.
we'll make this a little bit of a happier thing. And so they tried to do that. And one thing is they're not married. They're just boyfriend and girlfriend. And one of the things in the movie is Vicky keeps trying to get Burt to ask her to marry him.
Put a ring on it, Burt.
Yeah, and he keeps saying no, not yet, for some reason. But he never gives a real reason.
Right.
He just keeps saying no. That was all just an effort to make a happy couple, happy movie kind of thing. But the thing is, as we'll point out several times, Burt is kind of a dick.
Yup. Yeah, he's not nice.
Yeah, I mean, he's stressed out because in the movie, he's just become a doctor.
Yeah.
And he mentions that starting on Monday, he's going to be seeing 55 patients a day.
Right. He's starting a new job as a doctor. Okay.
So
All
maybe he's
right.
just stressed out.
Great. But still, no need.
Right.
So mean.
So then we cut back to the children of this town, Gatlin. And we see young Job and Sarah, and they are with a slightly older boy named Joseph. Now, the thing about the three of these kids is they're not super down with this cult
Yeah, they
of
know.
murdering kids.
They know better.
And they have been secretly meeting and playing records and games, and Sarah's been drawing her pictures. So Joseph decides that he's going to run away and get help. But he doesn't want to try to take the younger children with him because he says they're only going to slow him down.
Right.
So Job and Sarah agree to act as lookouts while he attempts to flee through the cornfield.
Mm-hmm.
And the children, Job and Sarah, immediately prove that Joseph was correct in not attempting to bring them. Because as he's running,
Yeah.
Job starts yelling, "Go now! Go! Go!" And then Sarah's yelling, "Nobody's looking! Nobody's looking!"
Right. I forgot about that. Yeah. So they
Yeah,
weren't
so
the best lookouts.
They allow Joseph to make a super subtle escape. Not surprisingly, in the cornfield, Joseph is caught
right.
by
Malachi.
I didn't even have to give her a cue or anything. She's just, Malachi. And this is the first instance where we see, well, actually, it's not the first because we already saw him in the diner, but
Right.
he will fuck you up.
Yeah. No, he's no joke. He's scary looking. He's creepy.
So Malachi cuts this kid's throat and then pushes him out into the roadway. And apparently, no one really comes through town most of the time,
Right.
but this just happens to be when Burt and Vicky are passing by,
Sure.
and they hit this kid in the road.
Yeah. Yeah. Like really hit him.
Right. So Burt gets out, and he, being a doctor,
Sure.
goes over to examine the body.
Of course. Naturally.
And he notices, actually, that this boy's throat was cut, and he was bleeding to death before they hit him anyway.
Right.
So now, of course, Vicky's come out of the car, and for the first time in the movie, but certainly not the last time, we hear Burt say something essentially like, "Go back to the car," or
Yeah. Like you
something
have
like
no
that.
business being here.
He basically, from here on out, every time he's in a scene with Vicky, will either begin or end his dialogue by saying, "Vicky, go away. Or Vicky, come here.
Vicky, get out of here.
Yeah. Seriously, watch the movie and count how many times he says something like that.
And she does it, and she goes.
She just looks at him like a dog. Like,
yeah.
She's like, what? Oh, okay. So back to Sarah and Joe. They are playing Monopoly, as a matter of fact, until Malachi walks in the room and throws a huge knife.
Yeah.
Now, I'm going to point out something here because this scene happens right after the scene where they hit the boy.
Right.
And that scene took a little bit longer, than I explained it. But even so, because Malachi is watching them through the corn, like as they're checking on the kid and everything. So now he's back at the farmhouse with the kids.
Right.
Malachi gets around.
He sure does.
And this is a very busy day for Malachi because he shows up everywhere.
Right. He is everywhere.
Yeah. So he throws the knife through the board game, and then because the kids aren't supposed to have games or anything, like no fun. They're dressed like Amish people, but it kind of seems like they might be like Puritans, actually.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're not allowed to have any kind of fun. No music, no dance, no drawing, nothing. Now, he brings them to Issac. Malachi comes in and he says, I found these children. They had games and music, and this one was doing drawings, and he hands him some of the drawings. And Issac looks at the drawings.
Right.
And he's like, oh, but this is the girl that can see into the future, and that's a blessing. And then Malachi's like, yeah, and I saw that car on the road because she drew a picture of the yellow car that they were driving. So then Isaac's like, oh, then they've come. Well, bring them back to the house. And Malachi's all pissy because he's like, well, we need to punish these kids. They're breaking the rules. Right. And Isaac's like, don't question me, bitch. And then Malachi's like, all right.
What? I love how Malachi is super tall and Isaac is...
Well, let's talk about that because we've been sort of walking around describing them. We might as well get to it. So the thing about Isaac is he's played by an actor named John Franklin. And John Franklin has a growth hormone deficiency.
Okay, yeah.
So that's what keeps him relatively young looking and what keeps him rather short.
Right.
Even right now, as a full-grown man of some years, he's 5 feet tall. So back in these days, he's probably even shorter than that, I would guess. He looks shorter.
Could have been. He said, but he was 23.
Yeah, he was 23 years old playing a 12-year-old.
Yeah.
In the movie. But even as a kid, like, I would look at it and be like, there's something weird about this guy because he looks young, but he also looks old.
Yeah.
Like, he's got like a young body, but kind of an old man face.
Right.
Not an old man face.
No. I know what you mean.
Not a 12-year-old face.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but in a way that was good because it works for the character.
Right.
Now, Malachi, on the other hand, seems to be rather tall.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Long red hair, flowing locks of red hair. But the biggest feature about Malachi is his mouth. He's got a giant mouth. And he's got buck teeth.
Right.
Which, by the way, this is Courtney Gains, the actor, of course. He does get them fixed eventually in real life. And he does not have an unusual mouth now.
Right.
But at this time, he did. But it was actually perfect. Cause
it worked for that creepy-ass character.
And even he seemed to realize it because he says for the movie, he would kind of jut out his lower jaw to give him more of like an underbite even. So he had these like wonky teeth anyway.
Right.
And then he was like making his mouth into like this crooked mouth anyway. So you can't not notice Malachi's mouth in this movie.
No.
So he's quite scary looking, I guess. Especially if you're a kid. Like I was scared of Malachi. Scared, but also like Malachi's a total badass.
No, I didn't think that. He just creeped me out.
Okay, so then Burt and Vicky stop at a gas station where their plan is to ask to use the phone. But as soon as they pull up, the old man is like, nope, can't help you. No phone, no gas. I don't know anything.
Wait, can you also mention the fact that they put the boy's body, Joseph, in the trunk?
That's true.
So they're traveling around with Joseph.
Yeah, because they're on a rural road and they talk about how they don't see any, they haven't seen anybody. Nobody's passed them.
Right.
So I guess that their thinking is we don't want to just leave the body.
Sure. Okay, so.
But still, it's a weird thing to do.
I think it is, yeah.
I would not put the body in the trunk.
No.
Maybe leave a note.
I would definitely put him not in the middle of the road, like put him off to the side.
Yeah.
And try to get help or whatever. I wouldn't put him in my trunk.
Well, I think maybe there might have, I can't remember exactly, but maybe there was a scene where he definitely points out that he thinks the killer is still close by.
Okay.
So I don't know if that is part of why.
Maybe.
But in any event, if you know the killer's close by, that's even more reason to get the fuck out.
Have nothing to do with it.
Yeah. So anyway,
sorry.
They go to this gas station. The old man says, I've got no phone, no gas, nothing that's going to help you. You need to go back from where you came or move on down. There's a fork in the road and you can go this way, and it's 19 miles till you get to the next town. And they say, well, what about Gatlin? That's only a mile away, and we saw a sign for it. And he says, oh, Gatlin, there's nothing in Gatlin.
No.
They don't like outsiders. Don't go to Gatlin. When you get to the fork in the road, take a left and you'll be fine. Go to that town. And they're like, oh, geez, all right, fine. So they leave. But then the children of the corn show up.
Oh,
and
Lord.
They kill this mechanic and his dog.
Yeah.
They don't show the dog being killed, but still. And the mechanic's like, hey, I didn't tell him anything. I did what I always do. I did exactly what I always do. I kept my deal. You kids leave me alone. But they end up murdering him. But I'm really not sure why.
I know. It was...
Because I think
it was unnecessary.
We find out later that was a Malachi judgment call. Okay. Isaac did not tell them.
Didn't put an order
and
to
did not approve it.
Right. Okay. So Malachi now is like going off.
Yeah.
On his own. Like.
Yeah.
He's
going rogue.
Yeah. He's had it with Isaac.
The next scene we see Isaac preaching, and he says that he who walks behind the rows is sending them their final test. They're sending an outlander man and his woman.
An outlander. Outlander!
Yes, that is the term that they use for the people on the outside, I guess. Now, Job and Sarah are at this meeting, but they're kind of like hiding in the corn.
Yes.
So they're not really in the meeting.
Right.
But my question is, why would they go anyway? They were just caught, and Malachi was told to bring them back to the house.
Right.
So then, in theory, Malachi brings them back and says, I've got to go to the meeting. So he goes down to the meeting. So then the children go to the meeting, but they don't go with Malachi, I assume.
No, I guess.
And then they just hide in the corn, but they said before that they're not interested in going to these things.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know the reason why they ended up going.
Little plot hole.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, at one point, Job says that he wishes Isaac never came to town. And Sarah turns to him. Remember Sarah, who can see the future and all? She turns to him and says, but he's always been here, like he who walks behind the rows. So what does that mean?
What does that mean?
Because actually, again, we're going to talk about this later on, but in the movie, Isaac is supposed to be 12 at the time of the story, right?
Oh, yes.
And I don't know if they mean 12 like in 1983 or 12 in 1980. But in any event, 3 years, like if 3 years passed or whatever, he's still old enough / young enough to be Isaac, right? But in the story, 12 years have passed.
Oh.
But Isaac is only 9.
Okay.
So is Isaac eternally a child? Or was there someone else before Isaac in the story? We don't get into that, but that's what I'm saying. And this reminds me of It, actually. Because It is a being that always lives in Derry.
Right.
And he survives off the shady shit that people in town do.
Right.
Like that's what feeds it. So you can't kill it.
Right. He's always there.
You can just get rid of it for a little while, but it's actually the people of Derry that are causing it to be able to survive.
Right.
So maybe this religious fervor in town or something like that is allowing Isaac to always survive as a child.
Yeah.
Just a theory. I don't know.
Could be. I like it.
So somehow the kids go back to the farmhouse, and that is where Burt and Vicky find Sarah, but Job isn't around. Burt, for some reason, decides he wants to go to town hall to find someone to help him with this problem.
He's so stupid.
Even they've already driven through town and been like, oh, it's abandoned.
Right.
And everything's covered in corn.
Yeah. Nobody's there. Nothing's there.
Let me just try town hall.
something could be going on at town hall.
And then Vicky's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right.
And he's like, no, you stay here.
Yes.
With this strange little girl.
Yeah. I'll leave you the car keys, though.
Yeah. I'm going to go walk.
And I'm going to walk to town. What? I don't understand him.
It's not a good plan.
I don't get it.
So basically, as soon as he leaves, Malachi shows up once again.
Yeah. With all the children.
With his crew.
Flashing those knives.
And again, we get those. We actually get a really cool shot of when Vicky comes and looks down the stairs.
Yeah.
There's kind of like an angle.
Right.
And you can't see. You just see feet walking.
Yeah.
And of course, it's Malachi, but it's a cool shot anyway.
Right.
And then, yeah, they seize her.
Mm-hmm.
And they bring her to the cornfield.
Mm-hmm.
And they put her up. She's alive, but they put her up on a crucifix, on a cross.
Right.
And she's just tied to it or whatever.
Yeah.
But when she's up there, she can see across from her what they call in the movie the blue man.
Mm-hmm.
And the blue man is the sheriff.
Right.
From 3 years before.
Yeah.
Who tried to stop the children.
Yeah.
Of the corn. And so he was crucified, and now she's being crucified. He's just a skeleton now.
Right.
But she's still alive and screaming, as you would, I suppose, if you were tied up.
Sure.
Now, Burt comes back after, surprise, surprise, not finding anyone in town hall. And he discovers that Vicky is missing. And Sarah's there, but Sarah won't really say much. Then he hears church bells, so he runs to the church because he's like, well, finally, there must be people in town.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why he assumes that these people would help him. There's been no
one's helping him.
Nothing has been good so
Everything
far.
is weird and creepy and strange. So, yeah, no.
So he runs to the church, and there he stumbles into a ritual that is taking place.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, I want to talk about some of the art on their church walls.
Okay.
Because they have, like, you know, pictures of Jesus and, like, all the stuff you would see in a regular church. But the children of the corn have added some detail to it.
Yeah.
So I guess like the art scene in Batman where the Joker goes around and like paints on all the paintings and adds his own stuff to it.
Mm-hmm.
They were doing this too, and it looks like they did some decoupage and some stuff. And I'm not saying I would want it on my walls, but I'm saying it's interesting. It's terror image, definitely.
Yeah, it's scary.
But I could see this being like an outsider art exhibit and being like, oh, that's very interesting. Like I like how they used the corn there and then the blue. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess so.
Yeah, I'd pay $10 to see that exhibit. Whoever the artists were in the Children of the Corn, they should have explored that. So anyway, the ceremony that he walks in on is there's the girl preacher that we mentioned earlier. Her name is Rachel.
Right.
And she is talking about, it's Amos's 19th birthday, and we all know what that means. So Amos, come on up, and Amos starts cutting himself. He cuts a pentacle onto his chest.
Yeah.
And he lets the blood drip into this bowl that's made out of corn kernels. And then he gives it over to Rachel. Right. And she's about to drink it, saying like, oh, now we're all going to share in Amos's blood. Yep. Yeah, cool. So she's about to drink it. And then Burt runs in and starts yelling about how unsanitary it is.
He's the voice of reason.
Yeah. Well, never mind that his lady is missing.
Sure.
And the child that she was supposed to be watching was still there. So he knows that, like, it wasn't just that they went somewhere. Like,
no, they took her.
Yeah.
She's gone.
And he's like, that's really gross. Don't do that. Don't you kids know anything?
From, like, a medical standpoint. Yeah. He's like, look, I'm going to be a doctor on Monday. So this is not okay.
Yeah. And then Rachel, the girl preacher, she's like, you be silent, interloper. Don't interfere with our ritual. This is what we do. He's 19. He's going to make the sacrifice. That's what we do on our 19th birthday. And you just stay out of it. So he's like, no, this is fucked up. And then the girl's like, no. All right, listen, you want to mess with us? Go get Isaac. No, go get Malachi. So some kids run off to go and do that. And Burt gives them a little lecture about religion. I don't even remember exactly what he says, but like, don't cut yourself, basically.
Like, this is bullshit. Don't listen to this, blah, blah, blah.
And he picks up the Bible. He's like, oh, did you get it from this?
Yeah.
Did you change everything or just the parts that suit you? And, blah, blah, blah. And he's kind of like holding the preacher girl by the arm, like twisting her arm back behind her and stuff. And then, the kids run back and they're like, Malachi comes. And then, Burt is still talking to the kids, and the preacher girl takes the sacrificial dagger that they've been using and stabs Burt in the chest with it.
Yeah.
But apparently it's not a fatal wound.
No.
So he just like pulls it out and starts booking it. But, of course, the children chase after him. And despite the fact that they said Malachi was coming,
right, we
don't see Malachi for once.
Yeah.
Because he's busy doing 5 other things.
Yeah, he's got a lot going on.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff happening.
So
he'll be there though soon enough.
So he runs and hides, and as he does, we get to see the children chasing him. And there is one extra who he's running by himself. He's just running around the corner, and he just like makes this noise as he runs, and it gets me every time. I'm gonna play the clip of it here for you.
It's amazing. He was really into it.
He was ready.
He wanted to get Burt.
So after some of the chase, he does eventually run into Malachi, and he has a little chase scene with Malachi in like this abandoned thing.
Right.
And he kind of traps Malachi, and Malachi gets injured for a moment and falls down and has to deal with something. And so he's like, oh, perfect. This is my time to escape. Then something really weird happens.
I'm telling you, I can't take Burt.
As he runs to escape, he turns and bangs his head into like a... What was it? I don't know, a pole or something? Yeah, like some kind of post that's there. He just runs into it. And then he runs out of the bit, like he's like, ouch. Yeah. And then he runs out of the building. But the thing is, like, so you would think, okay, if he runs into that, that's going to stop him. So Malachi now has the chance to get up to get him.
Yeah,
but that doesn't, he got hurt. That doesn't happen. He just keeps running.
Right, and Malachi's still on the ground.
So as we were watching it, and I was like, why does that happen? And I said, maybe that just happened, like, in real life. Maybe he accidentally walked into the thing, and they were like, keep going, and they just left it in there.
Oh, they should have taken that out.
I'm not sure that is like what happened, but just why else would you have that in the movie? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, it looked like...
It doesn't come up later. He's not like, oh, no, I have a concussion because I walked into a pole.
Right, and there's no, like, mark on his face. Like, but I mean, so there's no purpose to it.
It's just a
so
weird,
it must have just happened.
Comedy moment.
It was
it was
reason. Very comedic.
But it wasn't really though.
I
but
know.
It was.
I laughed out loud though.
Yes, you did.
I also laughed when he fell and tripped outside when the kids were chasing him.
Yeah, but that's a standard horror movie thing.
That's what I'm saying.
You got to build a little
I was
tension.
like, oh, they had to put that in there. Why?
Yeah.
Ugh.
So as he's running away from Malachi after banging his head and all, Job sees him. And he's like, hey, come here. I'm one of the good guys. Don't worry. Come here.
He didn't even say I'm one of the good guys, though. He was just like, hey, come over here. Like this weird little Amish-looking kid. And I don't know if I would have gone with him if I didn't know him.
Come into this basement where you definitely can't escape if you come in here.
Right. You got all those other crazy kids chasing, but I'm okay.
Yeah. So he does go into the basement with Job, and Job is one of the good guys.
He is. Yes.
So now he's down there with Job and Sarah, and they're kind of patching up his wounds. And in the meanwhile, Job is describing like what happened 3 years before and who Isaac is and who Malachi is. And he's talking about how Malachi basically killed everybody, all the important people in town, and the other kids helped kill everybody else and blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
Now, then we cut to a scene of Isaac again in the corn with all the children. But what happens here is he gets into another little scuffle with Malachi because Malachi wants to use Vicky as bait.
Right, yeah.
To lure in Burt, and Isaac's like, you don't know what you're talking about. Let me do things.
Yeah.
And then Malachi's like, all right, I've had enough of you.
Done.
You have become weak. You don't punish people who need to be punished. We worship a God of sacrifice, and you're not sacrificing anybody. This is what we need to do. And then Isaac's like, oh, I'm the word of the Lord, and blah, blah, blah. And Malachi pushes him down, and he's like, no, I'm taking over now.
Done.
And all the kids back Malachi.
Yeah.
So then Malachi's like, take her, meaning Vicky, off the cross.
Yep.
And put Isaac in her place. And we'll let he who walks behind the rows decide what to do with him. Now, as he's, as the kids are like coming, he's like, no, you can't do this. You'll all be punished. He who walks behind the rows will punish you. You will die 1,000 deaths, each more painful than the last. And then he says something about the god of hell. So do they know that they're worshiping a demon? Or is he just saying, like, in general, like, oh, the god of hell is going to take you over? I don't know. But that's the one little weird clue that we might get, that they know that something, like, this isn't God. It's they're straight up worshiping a demon.
Right.
So now this next scene is very famous because this is the scene where Malachi walks the streets of town trying to...
Outlander!
Yeah, he's yelling Outlander. And he's holding Vicky by the face. And that's literally what he's doing. It sounds like I'm just saying it, but no, he's literally like got his arm around her, but like holding her by the face.
Yeah.
And screaming, Outlander! I've got your woman, Outlander! And he's like trying to, she still lives. And, but you got to come and rescue her, basically. But for all this, and even though that's like a famous scene and everything, it doesn't work because Burt doesn't apparently hear him.
No, because Burt is in the basement with Job and Sarah just chilling,
Right.
Patching up his wounds.
So then they cut back to the children, and they cut back to Job and Sarah and Burt. And Job tells Burt that Vicky is in the cornfield. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, okay, well, you got to bring me there. So as they approach the cornfield, they see Isaac being attacked by super cheesy 80s computer or animation effects. I'm not even exactly sure what we're looking at, but it doesn't hold up well at all.
No.
But you see this like yellow red thing kind of it's just like an overlay basically, kind of creeping up on the cornstalk crucifix. And it takes him over and he's screaming the whole time, and of course he lets out this scream at the end, which is so high pitched.
Yeah,
I can't imagine it was the actor himself making that noise, but maybe. I don't know.
think it was him, and that was a high scream.
Yeah, it definitely was. And then the corn, like the crucifix and Isaac, everything turns red, and then it blasts off. Right. Like literally, that's what happens.
Yep.
They blew some corn up into the air, and it just disappears.
They didn't have a very big budget.
They did not
for this movie.
So then, as this is happening, the final moments here, Burt uses this time to run up on Malachi, who's still holding Vicky by the face.
Right.
He runs up and beats him across the back with a pipe or something, and grabs Vicky, and he's like, all right, Vicky, run back to the farmhouse.
Right.
And then he turns around to deal with Malachi, who's coming after him. So he gets in a little tussle with Malachi, and you see Vicky running, and then she just like stops.
Well, she stops because she just wants to. I don't know.
She does, but she turns around very casually. Like it reminded me of like gym class or something. Like you got to run the mile. Like okay, and then as soon as like you're away from the coach, you just like turn. You're like all right. Like that's the way she turns around.
Oh, see, I thought she was turning around because she just wanted to, see what, make sure that Burt was okay.
Story wise, I'm sure that is what was. Okay. The intention that was supposed to be played out there. I'm telling you.
That's not how it came off.
No. Okay. It came off like a really weird, just like stop running, turn around. And then she did. And then she just stands there.
Right.
And again, looking like a dog, like waiting for like an answer or something. And then Burt sees her standing there. Just standing there, just looking. And he turns to her and he says, Vicky, get out of here.
Vicky, get out of here.
But he says it like he's just like
Vicky,
exhausted
get out of here.
with this woman.
Yes, like last nerve, working the last nerve.
And then again, she awkwardly like stands there and she's like, ugh, fine, and turns and runs. So then he continues to fight Malachi, and he mounts Malachi, and Malachi's back is on the ground, and he starts like paintbrushing him, like dummy slapping him, and he does it a bunch of times. Like he's not punching him, he's slapping him. Like just paintbrushing him back and forth across the face.
Yeah.
Apparently hard enough to knock Malachi out. And I was like, wait a minute. The entire movie, we've set Malachi up as this total badass.
Right.
And this is how he goes out?
Yeah. Bitch slapped.
Yeah.
By Burt.
That part still bugs me every time. Then, zombie Isaac appears.
Yes. Ooh.
He comes and he breaks Malachi's neck, saying, he wants you too, Malachi. He wants you too. And that's the end of Malachi and Isaac. We don't see either one.
Yeah.
the rest of the movie, I mean, there's not much to it. They make up a plan to burn the cornfield, and that's basically what they do. Burt gives a speech before he runs off after Vicky about religion again, and saying that religion is about peace and love, and it shouldn't be about murdering parents.
Mm-hmm.
Then he's a jerk to Vicky when they get back there. She's the one that like realizes that they need to set the cornfield on fire.
Exactly.
And then he's like, "Oh, I know how I'll do it. I'll use this thing and blah blah blah." And she's like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Never mind."
Yeah, like totally
you're too dumb to
her.
understand.
Right. And it was her idea.
So then he takes Job out to help him because Job has a penis, I guess. And only people with penises are smart enough to do anything
right,
in
exactly.
this movie.
Right.
So he goes out to help him, and Job saves his life, somehow.
Yeah.
But even then, he's like, get out of here, Job. And he's like, oh yeah, sorry, I just saved your life.
I loved it.
He's the only one that like backs talk to him at all.
Vicky needs to learn some lessons from Job.
Yeah. So anyway, they do, and there's a big spectacular, and I use that in quotations, finale with again some kind of weird animation. You never see the monster. It just looks like a big cloud of smoke. It's actually ink that they superimposed into the movie. So, yeah, it's not a great...
No.
The ending is the worst part of the whole movie. It doesn't hold up at all. But you see the corn burn and a little demon face appears in the cloud of smoke. And then, it kind of sinks down into the earth or whatever. Back to hell or whatever. And then they go back to the car, and Burt says he's going to get the map out of the car. But before they do, they talk about he finally agrees to like be committed to Vicky, and presumably now they're going to get married.
Oh, how
and then
nice.
like, kids, you can stay with us for a day. And then Vicky's like, what about a week? And then he's like, well, what about a month? And then what about? So they, are jokingly adopting the children, I guess.
Yeah.
So then he's like, let me get the map out of the car, and we'll walk to wherever we need to walk.
Right.
So he goes to get the map, but when he does, up out of the back seat pops
Who?
Rachel,
Rachel.
the girl preacher. And she's like, interloper, you've got to die. And she's got her big, sickle or whatever. So he struggles away from her, and then as she tries to get out of the car to continue her attack, finally Vicky gets to do something, and she slams the door on that bitch's head, and she's knocked out. Now, why do we know she's knocked out? Because Burt...
He's a medical professional.
He is, and this is another weird moment in the film.
Yes.
He goes to the car, he opens the door, he sees that she's knocked out, and he goes, and this is exactly how he delivers it. He goes, oh boy, she's knocked out. What are we going to do now? None of those statements...
There ain't
anything to say.
You don't have to do anything.
He says, oh boy, like she fucked up. Like Vicky just fucked up.
Oh, yeah.
Like, oh boy.
Oh, I didn't even,
I didn't
even see it that way.
It's like, what did you do? Like,
yeah,
that's kind of like...
Vicky, look what you did.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Now she's knocked out. What are we going to do now?
Yeah. And what are we going to do now? Like what? Like you're worried about reporting it to the authorities or what? Because you have a town full of murdering children. You just saw a fucking demon. You've got a dead body in the car.
Exactly.
But you're worried about the girl you knocked out.
Makes no sense.
Yeah. So anyway, they decide to walk off, and that's where the movie ends.
That's it. The end.
So I definitely talked a lot more about the plot.
Yeah, than you wanted to.
Than I wanted to, but I feel like there were certain things that I wanted to bring up. Maybe I'll cut some of them out. But
yeah. Are you worried because you don't want to like give things away?
No, I'm not worried about that.
Oh,
but
okay.
I don't think the show is entertaining if I just talk about like then this happened, then this happened, then this happened.
Well, okay.
But I think I was saying this happened, and then I had a comment on it.
Right. Yeah. No. I think it was just right.
All right. Well, as long as you think so. I mean, we are at an hour now. Okay. So now let's talk about the short story a bit.
Okay.
I don't need to get into all the details because a lot of the details are basically the same. But first of all, in the story, there is no Job and Sarah character.
Really?
There's no friendly children that are going to help this couple get out of Gatlin alive. Okay. That was invented for the movie. The producer in the special features says that he did that on purpose because he didn't think audiences would accept like a town full of evil children without any kind of redemption. But in the story, that's exactly what it is. And the producer actually says that he feels bad about it. So a lot of the changes that he made, including making the couple likable and that kind of thing. He says, I really missed the point on what the story was trying to get across. And I was, I think he said he was 26 at the time.
Yeah, he was young.
And he's like, and I just thought I knew everything. And I just thought like, well, this is what audiences will want.
Right.
And so I at least applaud him for being able to say that, like, you know what, I made some mistakes. And if I had to do it over again, this is what I do. So as I mentioned earlier, it's 12 years passing instead of the movie's 3. And I don't quite understand how that works, because in the story, Isaac is supposed to be 9.
Right.
So if he's 9,
yeah,
12 years after the events,
right,
something doesn't line up, unless maybe he is eternally a child.
Yeah.
I'm going off an online synopsis of the story. I did read the story, but it was a while ago, so I can't say I remember exactly. As I mentioned, they're already married, but they're heading for divorce. In the movie, both Vicky and Burt want to leave Gatlin, but in the story, Burt thinks it's a better idea to stop in Gatlin and rather than take the dead body further away. So they do put the body in the trunk.
For a reason.
But he's like, well, let's not be traveling all around the country with it. Let's just go to whatever the next town is.
Okay.
And drop it off there.
Well, that makes sense.
In the story, Vicky and Burt, like I said, there's no children to explain to them what happened. They're just driving around the town and they find everything's deserted and all the calendars are out of date by 12 years. That's how they know it's been 12 years. The only building in town that still looks like it's in use is the church. It's, kept up and everything. So Burt wants to go into the church, but Vicky wants to get the fuck out of town.
Right.
She threatens to drive off and leave Burt in town. So he takes the keys to the car from her. And he's like, now you ain't going anywhere, and I'm still going into the church. You're being ridiculous. I'm going to, figure this out. So that is at least basically consistent between the story and the movie.
Oh, that he's a dick?
Yeah.
Okay.
And she becomes, hysterical and begs him not to go into the church. And he's like, be cool, I got this. And he goes into the church. Unlike the movie this time, there's nobody in the church. But he goes in, and it's defaced in much the same way as it appears to be in the movie with the, artwork and everything. And then he also finds a Bible, but most of the New Testament has been ripped out. So it's mostly just the Old Testament, blood and sacrifice and that kind of stuff. And then he also finds a registry book that registers all the births and deaths in town.
Yeah.
And he sees that for the past 12 years, everybody's been dying at the age of 19.
I see.
So he's like, oh, wait a minute. I get it. And then he notes that, all these other people died 12 years ago. And also that all of the children had their name changed.
Oh.
From modern time names to biblical names.
Okay.
And in the story, we learn that Isaac's real name is William Renfrew. And Malachi's real name is Craig Boardman.
Craig Boardman.
Yeah. Malachi is definitely scarier.
Yes.
Go get Malachi, or go get Craig Boardman.
Yeah.
So I think he actually won in that name change deal. So then, as he's doing this, Vicky begins to honk the horn outside, and he goes outside to see what's going on. She's in the car, but she is surrounded by children wielding the farming instruments.
Oh, no.
And before he can even run out to save her, they pull her out through the window and carry her off. So he runs out, and they start to attack him too. He's, trying to get his girlfriend or his wife, but they do specifically mention a redhead kid, but it turns out it's not Malachi because he kills this kid by stabbing him in the throat. And then he's able to run away from the rest of the kids, but he's running all around. The children chase Burt, but he escapes by running into the cornfield. That's when he comes to a clearing in the field where he finds Vicky crucified just like she was in the movie.
Okay.
But there's a difference.
What?
In the story, her eyes have been ripped out.
What?
And her mouth is stuffed with corn.
They ripped her eyes out?
Yeah. Also, she's dead.
Oh, no. They killed Vicky?
They killed Vicky.
Stop.
So then Burt turns around and he's like, well, now I'm going to finally take Vicky's advice and just get the fuck out of here.
Oh, you're kidding me.
But he turns around and the corn closes in on itself, so it just makes a wall.
Okay.
So now he's trapped in this circle.
Good.
And let's see.
Oh my God, I can't believe they killed Vicky.
So then, he's stuck in the cornfield, and a giant red-eyed monster runs out of the corn and kills Burt.
I'm glad.
Yeah. But that's not the end of the story.
Oh, okay.
Because the next day, the children meet in the cornfield, and Issac, the 9-year-old boy preacher, tells them all that he who walks behind the rows is displeased with their failure in killing Burt on their own. As punishment, he who walks behind the rows commands that the age of sacrifice will now be lowered to 18 instead of 19.
Okay.
So later that night, all the 18-year-olds walk into the cornfield to sacrifice themselves to he who walks behind the rows, including Malachi. Now, in the story, we learn that Malachi not only has a girlfriend named Ruth, but also she's pregnant.
What?
As he goes off to sacrifice himself, Ruth waves goodbye and begins to weep. Because Ruth secretly hates he who walks behind the rows.
Mm-hmm.
And she dreams of setting the cornfield on fire.
Mm-hmm.
But she's afraid to actually do it because he who walks behind the rows sees all and would probably be able to stop her and would have her killed if she attempted to do anything. With Burt and Vicky dead, as well as all the 18-year-olds being sacrificed, the story concludes by telling us the corn is pleased.
The corn is pleased.
Yeah. So again, the producer wanted a happy ending for the
Yeah.
movie, so that's why he let them go. But he does wish now that he had stuck more to the original Stephen King version.
I wonder how Stephen King felt about it.
The movie?
Yeah.
Probably not so great. Most of his work that gets turned into movies tends not to be good.
Mm.
He writes overly long books anyway, and he is known for having kind of sloppy endings. I'm not saying this myself. I enjoy his books. I do think sometimes they're overly long, but on the other hand, I enjoy his writing, so it doesn't bother me that they're long. I'm not like, oh, when is this going to end? I still enjoy it. But anyway, I can see what the criticism is. And so maybe that's just part of the reason why they have so much trouble translating it into movies. Although there are a few good Stephen King movies out there. But
I think so.
yeah, he's definitely doing all right for himself anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. So what are your closing thoughts on Children of the Corn?
Well, I liked it. It wasn't like crazy scary. I think it was more creepy, and there were creepy moments. And I wanted to see the sequels and all that because there's so many.
Yes, there are, I believe, 8 sequels or so, and then a remake.
So crazy. We tried to find some, but we couldn't.
Yeah, I have not seen all of the sequels. I've seen some because there's one. There's Children of the Corn 2, so I definitely saw that one. And then there's another one where Isaac returns. It's called Children of the Corn 666, Isaac's Return, I believe.
Ooh.
So I really wanted to see that one. And I do remember seeing it, but I don't remember anything about it except that Isaac is mostly in shadow. That's my main memory of the movie, so I have a feeling it wasn't great. But,
Okay.
I mean, to be fair, the first one isn't great in most ways.
Yeah.
But in some ways, there are some really cool things about it.
Yeah.
And having seen it as a child, like that always makes a big difference. Like I have nostalgia for the movie.
Right.
So if I were to see it for the first time now, I might not think it was anything amazingly special.
Yeah.
But having grown up with it
right.
and being like, oh, this was a scary movie that I was allowed to see when I was a kid. All right, then. I'm going to remind everyone one more time. Check out the website, spookyas.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/spookyas. And, of course, please subscribe, rate, and review the show on iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you may be listening from. And please tell a friend. Until next time, stay out of the cornfields. Don't be afraid.
Vicky, get out of here!
You must die!
Oh, boy. Oh,
she's out cold. What are we gonna do now?
Send her a get-well card from Seattle. Let's get the hell out of here.